Welcome to the BWISE PoliSports Briefs, where we unpack the politics behind the plays. Today's word, institutional bias. Because even when you think it's just a game, somebody's bias is deciding who gets to play. This is your host, Political Lil, and today we're breaking down how institutional bias shapes access, opportunity, and visibility in every corner of sport. Institutional bias is the invisible system that shapes fairness, or the lack of it, in sport. Bias isn't just personal, it's built into systems. In sports, that means some players face invisible barriers before the game even starts. Institutional bias means organizational practices that favor some groups over others, even without overt intent. Bias shows up in who gets hired, how media covers players, and even how referees call games. When we talk about institutional bias in sport, it's tempting to think of it as just individual prejudice, a bad rep, a biased reporter, or unfair coach. But the truth is deeper. Institutional bias shows up as a consistent pattern across organizations, systems, and decades. Patterns so normalized that people don't even recognize them as bias anymore. And nowhere is that more visible than in women's basketball. Multiple studies over the last 10 years show that black women who make up the majority of elite women basketball talent consistently receive less positive coverage than their white counterparts. Not less coverage overall, but less favorable coverage. The tone shift, the descriptor shift, the framing shift. White athletes get words like fundamentally sound, hardworking, leader, face of the sport. Black athletes get words like emotional, aggressive, controversial, needs to mature. That's institutional bias. It's not about one article, it's about an entire machine using different language for the same behavior. Now let's look at the NIL era. Take two players, one black, one white, similar stats, similar impact, and similar confidence. The white athlete is marketed as America's sweetheart, a once-in-a-generational talent, and a brand-friendly icon. Meanwhile, the black athlete with the same resume is framed around conflict, drama, or discipline, even when she's the one breaking records. We saw this with the Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark dynamic. Media outlets openly admitted they were prioritizing the marketability of one over the other, not because of performance, but because of narrative. Angel was labeled the villain. Caitlin was crowned the hero. That's the institutional decision. It shapes endorsement deals, public perception, and long-term earning power. And when institutions decide that certain athletes are more profitable, that choice becomes self-fulfilling. Then there are referees. Research from several conferences show that black players, men and women, receive technical fouls at a higher rate for the same behavior that white players get warnings for. The same yell, the same gesture, the same emotional display. The difference is interpretation. A black athlete's passion is seen as a threat. A white athlete's passion is seen as intensity. That affects minutes played, statistics, draft stock, and contract potential. It also feeds the narrative that black athletes are undisciplined or emotional, keeping the cycle going. And it doesn't stop there. Hiring practices show the same pattern. Even though black women dominate as players, they are underrepresented in head coaching roles, athletic director positions, commentary and media analyst jobs, front office leadership. It has nothing to do with qualification and everything to do with gatekeeping. Institutions replicate themselves. People hire who they already trust, and they trust people who look like them. So black women end up shut out of the leadership position within the sport they literally built. The key thing to understand is this. Institutional bias is not about intent, it's about outcome. Even without anyone saying, let's keep black women out, the system still produces the same results. Fewer features, fewer endorsements, harsher criticism, more punitive officiating, and limited access toward upward mobility. Over time, that shapes public perception. It shapes legacy, it shapes who gets remembered, as the face of the game and who gets erased after the record books close. If you look at someone like Cheryl Swoop, the actual blueprint of the modern women's basketball game, she doesn't get half the media reverence players of today receive. That's institutional bias. If you look at how the media covered Angel Reese confidence versus Caitlin Clark's identical gestures, that's institutional bias. If you look at why Dawn Staley still has to defend her team's style of play despite being one of the most successful coaches in sport, that's institutional bias. And the most dangerous part, institutional bias feels neutral because it hides inside everyday decisions. Who gets quoted? Who gets the late night highlight package? Whose jersey the league pushes? Who the broadcasters talk about for 20 minutes even when they're not playing? Who gets labeled a problem? Who gets labeled a pioneer? Who gets marketed as iconic? Who gets marketed as intimidating? Patterns don't lie. Institutional bias doesn't live in one moment. It lives in the accumulation of moments. And black women feel the weight of that accumulation every single season. Bias isn't always loud. Sometimes it's built into the rules. Bias doesn't need hate to survive, just silence. When we name it, we start to change it. That's your BWISE PoliSports Brief on politics and sport. If you want to dig deeper into how policy and power shape every play, catch the full 30-minute episode in our upcoming BWISE PoliSports podcast series, Sports as a Mirror of Society. Like, share, and hit the subscribe button, and drop a comment. Because at BWISE PoliSports Podcast, we are a justice-centered media channel where we teach politics through the lens of sport. Join the BWISE PoliSports Podcast and become a member of PoliSports Nation and Respect Her Game advocacy group at www.respecthergame.online, where we don't just watch the game, we understand the system behind it and support the black female athletes who play. Remember, sports are never just about the games we play, but the stories we tell and the systems we expose. This is your BWISE PoliSports host, Political Lil. Stay tuned for our next BWISE PoliSports Brief, Policy and Sports. Find out how rules, regulations, and government or institutional decisions shape who plays and who profits.